This is part 3 of a seminar I gave at the 2015 Washington Sportsman Show in Puyallup, Washington. We're talking about drift fishing and float fishing beads, and it's an introduction to those who are new to fishing beads. Bead fishing has grown in popularity and is very effective for both steelhead and salmon. Here in part 3, we will talk about float fishing beads and cover braided lines, floats, knots, weights, and rigging for float fishing steelhead beads. That's going to finish up on our drift fishing. Let's jump into doing float fishing using our beads. Just a little closer. All right. What I like here about float fishing beads is you've got choices. Okay? You don't have to use a fixed float system. You can use a sliding float system. Okay? There's all sorts of floats out there. I've got a whole box of them right here. So it's whatever kind of float you're comfortable with. We just have to get it balanced out. Okay? So, really quick, same rod setups. I'm using them. If you've got a float rod, cool, knock yourself out. You're good to go. Now, on this system here, I've got mono. Do you have to fish braided line to float fish? No, you don't. You don't. So if you want to float fish, go ahead. You have to pay more attention because what does braid do for us that mono does not? Floats. That's right. So it makes it easier to mend your line, right? Because that river wants to grab that line and push it down, and when it does, pulls the float out of the drift. Gets it out of the seam or the edge that you're fishing. So braid does work. So here's a tip or trick. If you're buying a new reel, spend a little bit more money, get a little better quality. Most of those reels come with 2 spools. You can spool one with braid, and you can spool the other one with your mono. It doesn't take anything to change your spool out. Okay? Under 5 minutes, you're changed out, you're tied up, you're ready to go. Yes, sir. What's that?
Don't change the spool in the water.
That's a very good point. Do not change your spool in the water.
Because your hands are cold.
Yes,
you drop
yes.
it, and you're just done.
You can drop the cap, okay? But here's a good one. Inside here, it depends on your reel, you might have a couple washers, and they like to stick to that spool on the inside. So you pull it off, you think you're sticking it in your pocket, those washers just fell off, and you look down, where'd those washers go? Well, they're floating down the river, okay? All right, so you can change that out, okay? Now you got to get into leaders. There's a few ways you can get your leader onto your braid, okay? We can tie a polymer knot to an inline weight, right? Here's an inline weight, and then we can tie our leader onto that. But let's say you don't have any. It's not a big deal. You're going to tie a knot together. You're going to tie a knot and get your leader onto your braid. What knot do we use for that? Anybody? Uni to uni knot. Works great, and they're easy to tie. Here's a tip for you guys. On the uni to uni knot, you're going to see the picture, because most of you can't remember what it is. So, but if you look at a picture, you can go, oh, I can tie that. It's going to have these nice, beautiful curves, right? You're never going to achieve that. So just make your loop, wrap it over, pull it tight. You got one side done, do the same on the other. But the uni to uni knot works great, okay? Now, do you have to use a uni to uni knot or an inline? No, you don't. You could, if you want, use a small crane swivel. Really small. That'll work. Keeps it balanced. Okay, do you have to get ultra small? No, you could use a size 10. It'll be fine. That will get the connection in there. So choices. Just because I do it one way doesn't mean that's the way you have to do it. Okay? All right. So now we've talked about getting our leader on our main line. Let's talk about floats, weights, and all of these little things I got going on here, because we're fishing a neutral buoyant bead. We need to get it down into the strike zone. Okay? Yes, sir.
Can you use one of those bullet sinkers, the ones that got the two eyelets on the end?
So the question is, can you use a bullet sinker? Those are the, if it has the eyelets on the end, it's this, and that's an inline. The real bullet sinkers literally look kind of like a bullet. They have a hole through the middle. I wouldn't use those. I wouldn't use those because typically you're not going to be able to find bullets, the bullet sinkers, in like 1/8 ounce. Okay? We need to start playing with the weight to make the float work properly. Okay, here's why. Floats have numbers on them. They're telling you what you can put under them. This is an 1/8 ounce float. So can I put a 1/4 ounce of weight underneath this and expect this float to work properly? No. Likewise, I don't want to grab this because I think I can see it really well, because this is a 1 ounce float, and then fish 1/8 ounce of lead underneath. It's not going to work. It's going to lay flat on the water. I'm not going to see the fish hitting that float. Okay? Match your float to the amount of weight that you have under it. Let me show you guys something here. This setup here, 1/8 ounce. What I'm doing is I'm using split shot, and I'm putting it in several places down the leader. I start with the larger split shot, and I go smaller and smaller. Could I go another one smaller? Depends on how deep I'm fishing. How much do I need? This works well. This is a very popular setup technique here. So here you'll notice I used a barrel swivel. I need to orient the float up and down. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm putting a number 7 above my barrel swivel or my crane swivel, and then I'm putting another number 7 right below it. That is going to help orient my weight right away, and then as these drop down, it's going to be completely vertical in the water as it floats down the seam or edge that you're fishing. Okay? Here's another one. If you're fishing an inline weight and it's a 1/4 ounce, and you're also going to have some split shot on there, do I want to fish a 1/4 ounce inline? No. I want to fish an 1/8 ounce inline. Then as I add this other split shot, that's going to equal a 1/4 ounce. Now this float will orient up and down in the water. Does that make sense? Okay. Pretty simple stuff. If it's a 1/4 ounce float, don't put more than a 1/4 ounce of weight underneath it. When you're putting this split shot on here, you don't want to have your split shot all the way down right to your bead. Don't do that, okay? I like to have it a minimum of 12 inches away. I've got this set up for a demo so that you guys can see all of this, but that bead has a neutral buoyancy. So from its float position, as this weight, this last weight's in the water straight down, up and down, this is able to just kind of move in there natural with the current, right? That's what I like about these beads versus something like the heavy bead. I'm getting a more natural presentation down there, okay? Again, you can peg your bead, no problem. Or if you want to fish that bead right down on the hook, you can do that as well. Usually when I'm floating my beads, I'll peg it, and I'll start about 1 inch to 1.5 inches away from my hook, okay? Think about the water that you're fishing. If you're fishing 4 feet of water, right, 4 feet of water, how long should your entire setup be from the float? 3 feet, right? Because the steelhead, they're not belly dragging, and you're going to put that stuff right in their face. I mean, look at what these fish are doing. They're hovering, right? They're just off the bottom. I want that bead either right above their eyes or just right above so they can see it to the side. I don't want it below them because steelhead don't go, right? I want it in front of them, above them. Well, that's it for part 3. Make sure you move on to part 4, where we will wrap this seminar up. We will cover stoppers for floats, split shot selection, and float fishing techniques while using beads for steelhead and salmon.